Should you be able to 3D print Warhammer minis? I think it's a complicated question with a complicated answer, but for generally speaking, I'm gonna go with no. Let me explain why.
I love 3D printing. It lets me paint and print so many cool minis I may have never had the opportunity to before. Artisan Guild is a well-known designer, and one of their most recent releases had this zombie dragon that made me think, wow, that'd be sweet to put a vampire on and play it in AOS. And I thought, why not do that then? But it got me thinking, would I ever be able to actually play these minis as an AOS army at my local game store? And I honestly didn't know the answer. Now, I could have just called my local game store and asked them what their policy is in this, but that's no fun, and I'm a YouTuber, so I thought, why don't I just make a video about it? I tried to consider this question from 3 perspectives: the player, the local game store, and, of course, the Games Workshop. I had a good idea of some 3D printable minis to represent some Soulblight Gravelord units already. I remained primarily in the Artisan Guild family, except for one mini I was considering, which was the white from a recent Legends of Keepers Kickstarter. However, if you are interested in 3D printing a white for yourself, this other guy from Artisan Guild I think would work just as well. I was primarily interested in 3D printing minis I thought would look cool. I of course had the vampire on a zombie dragon, maybe a white, maybe these horsey guys for Black Knights, and of course, skeleton boys. Regardless of how I ended up using these, they would be great for a proxy Soulblight Gravelord army, or even just pieces for D&D. I printed these minis on my Elegoo Saturn II. I have a lot of footage and experience with this bad boy, so if you're interested in a review, let me know and I will definitely do that. So, since the miniatures are printing, I thought we could get, a little casual, a little intimate here with you and discuss the LGS perspective, the local game store perspective. And ultimately, I think this is probably one of the biggest drawbacks. See, all the 3D printing I'm doing doesn't offer any type of money to my LGS, right? They didn't sell me the 3D printer, they don't sell 3D printers, they don't sell resin, they don't sell anything related to 3D printing. And ultimately, the only thing I might buy in this situation is some paint, and they only sell Citadel and Army Painter paint. So, and I use some Citadel paint, but that's about it. So ultimately, the only type of money I'm going to be injecting into my LGS in this instance is maybe a $5 table rental fee, which they only do on certain nights anyway. So I'm really offering no benefit to my LGS by 3D printing my own army and bringing it to the shop to play. And I think that sucks, right? Like, they sell GW minis, they sell tons of game minis, and so not spending money on that for them is a big deal. And I don't like that. I think part of being a player is really supporting your LGS, and so this kind of hurts that. I thought now would be a good time to discuss my own perspective in this matter. Ultimately, the cost of resin is marginal here, maybe $3 to $4 worth of resin in total. The printer is of course expensive, but you could definitely complete this project on a smaller and cheaper printer, just maybe a little slower. But if you think about the equivalent cost of minis on GW's website, it is nearly the cost of an Anycubic Mono 4K if you want, and that's just for what I printed here, not including if you wanted to do an entire army, which is usually around 2,000 points, which could run you potentially upwards of $600, which you could easily spend on a really nice 8K printer and print it all yourself.
Yeah, I said it. What are you gonna do about it, huh? What are you gonna do about it?
I will say though, 3D printing can be pretty finicky, and it takes a while to get your settings dialed in and take care of all the necessary safety aspects that come with 3D printing, which are definitely significant factors you need to take into consideration. To touch briefly on how I painted my little skelly boys, I did the same process across all of them. I used buff for my bone color, I just did standard TMM on the metals, brown for the leathers, and then a black and purple is kind of my main colors for clothing. And then we'll talk a little bit later about the next big step. Hint, hint, it requires oil paints, and I will break down that process a little later in the video.
Here's the thing. I think proxies are okay, to an extent. I don't know about a whole 3D printed army, but I think, a mini here and there is cool.
I think kit bash parts for minis and for basing pieces and stuff like that, you know, shoulder pads, weapons, helmets, whatever. I think that stuff's cool. It adds uniqueness. It really lets people personalize their miniatures, and I think that's a positive. But like the vampire I'm painting for this army today, I really like that model, and I think it'd be really cool to be able to include that with the GW minis in the army, and that be like not super frowned upon. To explore my little vampire boy a little bit more, I wanted to break down the main painting components for this guy and his armor, just because I thought it was a bit of a fun, unique method that you don't always see. We're going to use a kind of pseudo slap chop effect here. I'm going to paint a dark steel, which is an 80-20 mix of AK steel and just a black. Your favorite black will do. I like Vallejo. And I will cover the whole mini in this, and then I will just do an edge highlight, kind of like a dry brush with just the straight AK steel. And then I will take a contrast paint. You can use whatever contrast paint you want. I'm using Luxion Purple just because we're going through a bit of a purple theme here. And I'm just going to kind of use it like a wash almost. And I'm going to cover all of my metallic bits. And what this will do is just give it a shiny but colored effect. It'll look like purple metal, like purple TMM. And we're just doing this by utilizing the normal TMM paints we have and contrast paints. So you don't have to worry about buying different colored TMMs if you don't want to. You can just do it this way.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Now, I promised I would come back to the skeletons and finish them off with a bit of oil paint. I think that oil washes in particular are great for utilizing on a lot of different minis. So if you've got a ton of different skeletons, I think oil washes can be a great way to add a lot of contrast and depth to them. I use these Aptoling oil paints that are supposed to be specifically for miniature painting use, and I just mix it with a little bit of odorless spirits to a kind of wash-like consistency, and then I just lather the crap out of these skeletons. I usually let them sit for about 6 to 8 minutes before I move on to the next step. So now that I've waited my 6 to 8 minutes, I will take Q-tips, a little bit of odorless thinner, making sure that it's not like dripping off the Q-tip, and then I will lightly dab and swipe off of the raised points of my skeletons, leaving a gritty, dark wash effect. Now, I of course opted to not do all of the minis I thought about doing for this project. I just ran out of time, and unfortunately the Skelly Boys on horses that I was going to do as Black Knights ended up getting broken, so I ended up just kind of scrapping that part of it and just sticking with these parts. I think I was able to discuss the points I wanted and explain the painting effects that I wanted as well.
Let me know what you think of 3D printing in this instance, and with companies that have established games, established miniatures lines, do you think 3D printing is okay, not okay? You think it's kind of in the middle? Let me know what you think. You can, I think I have a semi-good opinion here. I don't know. You tell me. I'm sure you'll let me know what you think of it in the comments down below, but I'd love to hear it. Of course, subscribe, like, all that fun stuff really helps me out. And of course, check out this video if you've liked some of the painting techniques I discussed in this. Got a little bit more in depth there. Of course, as always, elevate your game night.